What's happening, everybody? On today's show, we're going to get you caught up with the latest news going on around the conference as we get you set for SEC Week 9. And we'll preview some of the games with Lyn Scarbrough of Lindy Sports. Locked on SEC starts right now.
Are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this year with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and at LockedOnSEC.com. Let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Makes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start with the Georgia Bulldogs, number one team in the country. They're going to be a heavy favorite when they face Florida in the cocktail party this weekend in Jacksonville. Bulldogs have won 4 of the last 5 meetings, including a 34-7 win last year. Despite disparities on paper between the two teams, Georgia trying to go about this as business as usual. Their left tackle, Broderick Jones, talking with the media and talking about his team's come from behind fourth quarter rally against Missouri a couple weeks ago. He said, look, I've learned throughout my years of college, never underestimate an opponent, no matter what their record is. So we come in every week, prepare the same as if we're playing in the national championship game, prepare like it's our last game. You want to give it your all. So we just come in with that mindset every week, ready to work, stay focused on our opponent, and lock in on our assignments. Kirby Smart, his focus this week, talking about defending Florida quarterback Anthony Richardson. He was asked on Wednesday during the SEC coaches teleconference if he's seen anything on film that indicates why Richardson can be so good at times and struggle other times. And Kirby said, I really haven't looked at it that way. In my opinion, he does what the offense asks of him. He's come a long way from the time he played last year when it was more quarterback run oriented. Kirby Smart also talking about his quarterbacks, particularly Stetson Bennett. He said Stetson has not changed. It has not changed him in terms of winning or his role being here in his 5th year. He's always been a happy guy, loves competing, loves football, certainly in the spotlight a lot more now. He really likes big moments and competing, and that's what you look for in your quarterback. Of course, kickoff of this game, 3:30 Eastern on CBS on Saturday. Some good news for the Florida Gators on their front as Osiris Torrance will be back in Florida's starting lineup when the Gators face Georgia on Saturday. The offensive lineman played in 6 games this year. He was ruled questionable for this game by Billy Napier leading up to the contest against LSU and did not play in that game. Florida's bye week gave him a chance to get back healthy, and now he is good to go against the Bulldogs. Before coming to Florida, Torrance played for Billy Napier at Louisiana Lafayette for 3 seasons, was the first-team All-Sun Belt selection last year. So really good player. Florida having a little bit of a shakeup on their special teams depth, however. Long snapper Marco Ortiz has reportedly entered the transfer portal. Reported by Gators Online, Ortiz, a redshirt junior who has missed most of the season because of a shoulder injury. He'll have 2 years of eligibility left at his next school. Meanwhile, over at Kentucky, Mark Stoops getting ready for a big matchup with the number 3 team in the Tennessee Volunteers. Of course, 2 schools not far away from one another. It's a rivalry game, yet this will be the first time in 71 years both teams are ranked coming into this game. Mark Stoops, talking with the media this week, says, it surprises me. It's been 71 years. Hopefully we'll both continue to be ranked while we are playing each other. For myself, it's about taking care of our own backyard and our own program. That is my concentration. Stoops did admit when it comes to rivalries, it's probably Louisville that most Kentucky fans would see as their biggest rival. He said, I just think because of where we're located, you hear more about Louisville. We're located in the same state, an hour away. And obviously, look, Tennessee, a big game for Kentucky and one that they want to win. Stoops said Wednesday he believes the key to Josh Heupel's offense has been the play of senior quarterback Hendon Hooker. He said, I think he makes really fast decisions. But there's one thing we all know, he's accurate because of his completion percentage, but I think it's impressive how accurate he is on the deep throws. Now, since this game is a contrast in style of play. Josh Heupel talking with the media this week. He was asked how he adjusts to the changing pace. He said, look, you got to maximize your opportunities. That's true if you're getting 10 to 11 possessions a game or 14 defensively. We got to do a good job at the line of scrimmage. You get off the field on third downs. Got to move the ball offensively. Kentucky's game at Tennessee set for 7 p.m. Eastern Saturday night. Will air on ESPN. Volunteers on a 12.5-point favorite, according to our friends at BetOnline. Meanwhile, over at Alabama, they're enjoying their bye week this week. Cornerback Eli Ricks settling in to that Alabama defense. Had a very good game last week against Mississippi State. Was hampered by a back injury at the beginning of the season. But again, registered 4 passes defense this past week. One of his teammates, Brian Branch, talking about Eli Ricks. He said, look, Eli played phenomenal. Every pass that was thrown his way, he shut it down. I knew he was capable of doing that, but for him to come out in the first game and do that, it's great. I feel like big things are coming Eli's way. We'll see what Eli Ricks can do next week. They're enjoying their bye week this week, but they will play LSU next week. Now, Nick Saban also announced on Wednesday, losing a little depth on their defensive line. He said senior Justin Aboigbe won't return this fall after injuring his neck. When asked if he'd be back on the field this fall, Saban said, I don't think so. He had a procedure done that would enhance his opportunity to be able to play in the future, but I don't think that's going to come this season. Aboigbe played in 4 games this season, did not play in the road game at Arkansas on October 1st. He's a Georgia native, made 11 tackles this year. In his first 4 games, 19 tackles in each of his previous seasons. He's a 4-star recruit coming out of high school and highly touted. Meanwhile, over at Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz on his weekly radio show Wednesday night talking about the injury status of one of his wide receivers that is yet to play this season. Third-year sophomore Chance Looper had a blood clot in one of his lungs that was discovered prior to the season opener. Looper currently taking blood thinners as a result, Drinkwitz said. Looper played in 4 games as a true freshman in 2020. 2021, he made 21 catches for 203 yards and a touchdown. His dad coaches running backs for the Tigers. Mizzou is back in action on Saturday as they travel to number 25, South Carolina. Now, L.J. Hewitt announced his decision on Twitter on Wednesday that he's going to enter the transfer portal. He joined the team after spending the spring at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. Prior to that, he was at Holmes Community College. He said, I will remain enrolled in classes throughout the remainder of the semester. My journey is just getting started. I look forward to pursuing a high level of academics and my academic career. Hewitt did appear briefly earlier in the season. He was later suspended, according to Eli Drinkwitz. So see where he ends up. Meanwhile, over at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin getting ready for Texas A&M on the road, heading to College Station, who they are struggling at 3-4 this year. But on Wednesday during the SEC teleconference, Lane Kiffin was asked about former Ole Miss defensive coordinator, now current A&M defensive coordinator, DJ Durkin. Lane Kiffin said, yeah, DJ really turned around our defense here and played really good, especially the second half of last year. We tried to keep him because he did a great job, but we got outbid. Kind of common theme with that program. He's doing a really good job over there. They're very multiple, doing a lot of good things. So Lane Kiffin saying, got outbid, kind of a common theme with that program. So shots fired by Lane Kiffin over at Texas A&M. We'll see if that inspires either team with those fighting words. Meanwhile, at A&M, Jimbo Fisher did not want to talk about any of the reported suspensions of his players that have come out in recent days. Jimbo asked on the SEC teleconference on Wednesday, he said, we're not speaking on that right now. We keep all that in-house, keep it internal, said LJ Johnson, still with the team. A report from Billy Lucci of Texags noted earlier in the week that Texas A&M has reportedly suspended 3 freshman football players, maybe 4 as a result from a locker room incident. The suspended players, Denver Harris, PJ Williams, and Chris Marshall, were all part of A&M's number 1 recruiting class. Of course, the Aggies fell to 3-4 at the loss at South Carolina last weekend. One other note, A&M losing a special teams player. Alan Guerreri is reportedly entering the transfer portal. Will have 2 years of eligibility remaining. One note over at Auburn, former 4-star recruit Tavarish Dawson, the 10th member of the 2021 recruiting class to exit the program for greener pastures. He announced he's entering the transfer portal, did not travel with the team to Georgia and Ole Miss earlier this month. When asked during the bye week of his status, Brian Harsin told reporters Dawson was still practicing with the team, would be part of the rotation moving forward. He is now entering the transfer portal. And Brian Harsin having to defend himself more and more in the public eye. On Wednesday, it was reported by Auburn Daily that Harsin was denying red shirts for players without medical reasoning. According to the report, Harsin told players to either quit the football program or enter the transfer portal. On Wednesday, in the teleconference, he said he didn't know where that report came from. Earlier this week, both Landon King and Zykevius Walker announced their intent to transfer from the program. He said, we have obviously who has redshirt availability as a staff. As we talk about that as a staff, we know the amount of games, so we really monitor that as a staff. We've done that every year, and certainly with the new 4-game rule, we've always paid attention to that. Harsin under heat after last season and this season. We'll see what happens to Brian Harsin following this season. There you have it. That is the latest news going on around the conference. Thank you guys again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we're going to talk with Lyn Scarbrough of Lindy Sports. We'll get his thoughts on some of the Week 9 games in the SEC. But first, I want to remind you about our friends over at SweatBlock. We told you multiple times about SweatBlock. If you or someone you know suffers from excessive sweating, if you're one of those people that in your office you are sweating, you have to change shirts, if you're doing that at the tailgate or football games, whatever it is, if you're dealing with excessive sweat in your armpits or wherever, you want to check out our friends over at SweatBlock. SweatBlock gives you the confidence to wear what you want without embarrassing underarm sweat. They got the deodorant, they've got the wipes, and the SweatBlock wipes. They were featured and tested on the Rachel Ray Show by firefighters who stand by the product. If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, you need to go try SweatBlock. You can save 20% with our promo code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON over at sweatblock.com. Again, save 20% with our promo code SweatBlock or promo code LOCKEDON at sweatblock.com. You can also find them available on Amazon. Go check them out, SweatBlock. If you're dealing with excessive sweating, use our promo code LOCKEDON, get 20% off. Going along here, Locked On SEC, one of our favorite segments this time of week. We love catching up with our buddy Lyn Scarbrough of Lindy Sports, talking all things SEC football with him, and he joins us right now. Lyn, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, guys.
A couple of big matchups in the SEC this weekend, and to me, you know, we're setting up for the prime, basically SEC East championship next week when Tennessee goes to Georgia. But I'm looking at both teams this week, and neither of them are trying to be in that look ahead spot. Like, Georgia's got to take care of business against Florida and Jacksonville in the cocktail party, and Tennessee's got a feisty top 20 Kentucky team coming in. It's just funny looking at these games because it's like, all right, who's going to get caught looking ahead? Who's going to get caught napping on this week's opponent?
Well, I don't think Georgia has to give the game away. I'm not at all sold on Florida. I haven't been sold on them since the start of the year, and I'm not sold on them now. I think Georgia's like a 20-point favorite. Won't surprise me at all if they win by that margin. So I can't imagine they'd be looking ahead. Kentucky's in a position, guys, that they could control their own destiny. I mean, yeah, they're behind right now, but let's say that Kentucky were to beat Georgia and to beat Tennessee. Kentucky's still not out of this. Now, I don't think that'll happen, but I've been high on Kentucky since the off season and still pretty much am. I do think Tennessee will beat Kentucky, and I think Georgia will beat Kentucky as well. But Kentucky's a factor. They're a good football team.
Lyn, Texas A&M going through some issues. A couple of offensive linemen out for the year. A couple of their freshman players suspended this week. They've lost some games, sitting here at 3-4. They've lost 3 in a row. Do the Aggies have any chance to beat Ole Miss this weekend in College Station?
I mean, they can. They can. Again, I don't mean the ugly. I know we're not, but I haven't been high on A&M all season. They've been, similar, kind of in the same pot. Hey, I want to give you credit on this, Chris. And I'm still not sure how good LSU is, but they're obviously better than I thought they were, because I put them in the same bracket with Florida and Texas A&M and a couple other teams that have big names, but that I did not think was going to be that good.
Yeah,
I'm still not sure how good they are.
On that note, Lyn, Jaden Daniels, 11 combined touchdowns the last 2 games. The last LSU quarterback to do that was Joe Burrow in the 2 playoff games. He had 14 combined touchdowns against Oklahoma and Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I say. They're just, they're better than what I thought they were. We'll see how good they are. They still got to play Alabama, and let's see how that turns out. The only, they haven't played Georgia, and don't play Georgia. They haven't played Alabama. They do play Alabama. The only really good team they played was Tennessee, and that was a total mismatch. So let's see how they do when they get up against the other ranked teams. But LSU is certainly a better team than I thought they were, and so hats off to them. Texas A&M is not a better team than I thought they were. The only thing that's really surprised me, the fact that they're 3-4, surprised me because I couldn't imagine Appalachian State coming in and Texas A&M only having the ball 18 minutes on Kyle Field. They didn't get run out of the stadium on the scoreboard, but they did on the field. And that should have been a precursor to us knowing, I believe on this show last week, I may have picked South Carolina. I know I picked them on my picks, and I picked them on the radio network. So it did not surprise me that Texas A&M lost that game in South Carolina. They can salvage the season, sure. I mean, they could win out. It's not out of the range of possibility that Texas A&M could win all the rest of their ball games and finish 8-4 and go to a decent bowl. It's also possible they could lose 2 or 3 more games, and it's we'll see. I've got a couple of A&M friends, and I've done some stuff with A&M before. To say that the A&M family is not happy, giving Jimbo $9 million to be 1-3 in the SEC and be beat to death by Appalachian State would be an understatement. So can they get it done? Yeah, I think they can. But I wasn't high on them to begin with, even though Lindy's picked them high. And this is let's see. It's easy to the bad part of it, guys, is that Jimbo has sort of created his own monster, sort of like Dr. Frankenstein here. He had a whole lot to say about his team being good, and then they beat Alabama last year and fell on their face after that. Then they go out and recruit the highest ranked recruiting class that Lindy's has ever had since we've been ranking recruiting classes. Texas A&M's class was number 1 in the country, and also the highest ranked class that we've ever seen. And they go out as the number 5 or 6 team in the country, and they're sitting there at 1-3, and potentially have several other losses to go. So this is it's a big test, and obviously Jimbo's buyout would be so big that I don't think he's on the hot seat. But let him have another couple of years like this, and that that amount of money might seem smaller.
More with Lyn Scarbrough in just a second. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Going along here, our conversation with Lyn Scarbrough of Lindy Sports, and we jump right back into it. We love talking college football and SEC football with Lyn Scarbrough. And Lyn, kind of outside of the SEC with this question, but I've been very impressed with the job Dan Lanning has done as head coach of the Oregon Ducks. Former Auburn quarterback Bo Nix has really bounced back after that Week 1 loss to Georgia. In your opinion, do the Georgia Ducks, or Oregon Ducks rather, have a chance to run the table and maybe get into the playoff, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think they do. Here's the issue, and here's what I actually see happening is I see TCU potentially being the Oklahoma State and Kansas State of a few years ago. I think Oregon can make it, sure, but let's say that Clemson wins the rest of its games. It's undefeated. Ohio State, Michigan winner defeats the other division guy, and they're undefeated. So you got those two. You got Clemson. You got let's say the Georgia Tennessee winner wins out, and they win it. They're undefeated. So you've got Ohio State or Michigan undefeated, Clemson undefeated, and Tennessee or Georgia undefeated. And then you've got a bunch of one-loss teams. You got Oregon, whose only loss is to Georgia. You would have Ohio State or Michigan. You'd have potentially the loser of Georgia, Tennessee, or the loser of the SEC championship game. You're talking about a lot of one-loss teams. Syracuse that only lost to Georgia. Only lost to Clemson. And so I think the question is more, would TCU have the chance to be left out, which would be the third time that an equally that a Big 12 team with an equal record has been left out of the college football playoff. I think Oregon could make it, sure, but just being realistic about the way that voters are and the way that certain teams get, the same way in basketball with Kentucky and all. But is a one-loss Alabama team going to be put behind a one-loss Oregon team or a one-loss Michigan team or a one-loss? I would say past history shows not. Ask Oklahoma State and Kansas State what they think about whether or not Alabama gets equal treatment. And I think Oregon can make it, absolutely. But right now, I think the big question is what's going to happen with TCU. If TCU runs the table and ends up being undefeated, I'm going to make the case, and we'll probably do it in a column and on the radio, that TCU should get the fourth bid. Now, assuming we got an undefeated Ohio State, Michigan, undefeated Clemson, and undefeated Georgia or Tennessee. There's your three of them. Those are automatic. TCU should be the fourth guy. And whether or not they will be or not, whether or not they give it to Alabama or the Ohio State, Michigan loser or Oregon or whatever, we'll see. But it just makes the point of why we have to have and why they've made the right move going to an 8 or a 12-team playoff. It has been inherently unfair from the beginning to have 5 Power 5 conferences and only 4 seats at the table. And I feel for TCU, if they may not run the table. Heck, they may lose this weekend. But if TCU runs the table, I'm going to be their biggest advocate for them being the fourth guy in the playoff.
All right, Lyn, let's jump into some quick hitters, getting your picks in some of the SEC games this weekend. Let's start with Arkansas at Auburn. Who do you have winning in this one?
I'm going to make a pick here that I'm going to make a similar pick down the road. I'm going to pick Auburn to win this game. And I know if you look at the stats, if you look at the numbers, it ought not to be. But Auburn has to win. They've already got 4 losses. And if they're going to have a reasonable shot at earning a bowl bid, I can't see a path to them doing that if they lose to Arkansas.
All right. What about Missouri at South Carolina?
Yeah, the game of the Columbias. And I'm going to go with South Carolina. They're the home team. They've got the momentum. This would put them to 6-2 and already qualify for a bowl. So I'll go with South Carolina primarily on the fact that they're playing at home.
All right. Can Kentucky do the impossible, in your opinion, and pull off an upset of Tennessee?
They could. They shouldn't. Kentucky, I've been high on them all year, saying they had a chance to be the upsetters with Tennessee and Georgia. They still do. But Tennessee's at home coming off that big win. I think Tennessee will win the ball game. Again, I think the line's too big. It was 16 points or something. I think that's too big of a line.
We already talked about the game, but give me a pick in Ole Miss at Texas A&M.
I'm going to pick Texas A&M to beat Ole Miss. And again, it's for the same reason that I picked Auburn and I picked some others. A&M has to win. They're 3-4. If they lose this game, it's hard to see them qualifying for a bowl bid. That's a big crestfall going from 5th or 6th in the country all the way down to not even making a bowl bid. Very talented Ole Miss offense, but I'm going to go with Texas A&M to pull it out, again, just sort of because they have to.
All right, lastly, who are you picking in Florida and Georgia and Jacksonville?
I just don't think Florida's got enough to beat Georgia this year. I think Georgia's going to win the game and go into an undefeated matchup the next week with Tennessee.
Lyn, thanks so much for the time, man. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks a lot. Good luck to the Astros.
All right, thanks, Lyn. Appreciate it. Of course, we'll be rooting for the Astros against the Phillies as well. He is Lyn Scarbrough of Lindy Sports. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys again for making us your first listen every day. For your second listen, go check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter to the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. You can find it on the Locked On College Network, covering your team every day. And, of course, we've got you covered with tons of great SEC podcasts as well, covering all your favorite SEC schools. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow right here on Locked On SEC.